The game can be very cruel, but sometimes when you love a club so dearly, then you have to let a manager go. And that's what Chelsea Football Club did this morning when they sacked Frank Lampard and are planning to bring in Thomas Tuchel. But I truly believe that the firing of Frank Lampard was 100% deserved, and I'll let you guys know why. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of my future uploads. But with all that being said, let's just get right into it. Under the Roman Abramovich era, Chelsea have become one of the biggest clubs not only in England, but in world football. And with that being said, they should be always competing for a top 4 position in the English Premier League table. Before Frank Lampard was fired this morning, in his last 8 Premier League games, he lost 5 of those matches, and Chelsea currently sit in 9th place in the English Premier League table. Now you might be thinking it's not so bad because Liverpool are only 5 points away in 4th position. But you have to take into consideration Tottenham Hotspur, Everton, West Ham, Aston Villa, and Southampton when you're analyzing the English Premier League table. Despite having worse squads, Aston Villa, West Ham, and Everton sit above Chelsea in the English Premier League table. And you have to take into consideration the games in hand that Everton, Tottenham, Aston Villa, and Southampton have. When you're making a decision to fire a manager, you always have to assume the worst. Tottenham are in 5th place and are 4 points ahead of Chelsea, but they also have a game in hand. So if you assume the worst and they win their game in hand, then they would stretch the lead above Chelsea from 4 points to 7 points. Everton are in 6th place and currently sit 3 points ahead of Chelsea. But if you assume the worst once again, and if they win their 2 games in hand, then they would stretch the lead from 3 points to 9 points above Chelsea. Aston Villa are level on points with Chelsea, but they also have 2 games in hand. So again, if you assume the worst, and if they win their 2 games in hand, then they stretch the lead above Chelsea to 6 points. Southampton are also level on points with Chelsea, but if they win their game in hand, then they would go above Chelsea in the English Premier League table, and Chelsea would drop to 10th place. By the way, Arsenal are also coming for Chelsea. They turn around their bad run of form and are only 2 points away from Chelsea in the English Premier League table. When you consider the size of Chelsea Football Club and their squad quality, a lot of people predicted that they would finish in a top 3 position this season. But with Frank Lampard's recent run of form, Chelsea currently sit at 9th place, and if he had continued, it would have potentially gotten worse. Which brings me into my next point. Frank Lampard's tactics were holding back Chelsea. If I'm being completely honest with you, I have no idea what Frank Lampard's tactics are every time Chelsea stepped onto a pitch. In the last 2 months of football, Chelsea showed no signs of progression or improvement whenever they were struggling. And that was highlighted by how many times Frank Lampard kept tweaking with the starting lineup. Halfway into the season, I don't think Frank Lampard knew what to do with the squad, and I still don't think he knew what his best 11 was. And to make matters worse, Chelsea spent a lot of money in the last summer transfer window, and his tactics have not shown a return of investment. Timo Werner was one of the most prolific goal scorers in Europe last season, and yes, he did play in the Bundesliga, and yes, he did miss some big chances this season, but every goal scorer always hits a bad run of form, and I always believe it's a manager's responsibility to get your striker back in form, and I don't think Lampard was putting Werner in a position to excel. There's times this season we've seen Werner play on the wing, and when you have one of the best goal scorers in Europe playing on the wing, I don't think he will affect the game in any way. Under Frank Lampard, Timo Werner has only scored 4 goals in his 19 appearances for Chelsea Football Club in the English Premier League, and that's simply not a good enough return if you want to lead Chelsea to a top 4 spot in the table. Another expensive signing that Chelsea made in the summer transfer window was to acquire Kai Havertz, who was known as one of the most prolific playmakers in the Bundesliga. And yes, there is less competition in the Bundesliga when you compare it to the English Premier League, and yes, Kai Havertz did struggle with coronavirus this season, but despite all of that, he was still able to make 16 appearances in the English Premier League under Frank Lampard, and he's only recorded 3 assists. Under Frank Lampard, we haven't even seen a glimpse of the playmaking ability that Kai Havertz possesses. Frank Lampard's tactics haven't helped Kai Havertz create chances and put his teammates in goal-scoring positions this season. So since Frank Lampard was not able to make the best out of his 2 most expensive signings, I think the best decision was to let him go. And I also think it's unfair for us to analyze Ziyech's season because he has spent a lot of time on the sideline through injury. So what are the expectations for Thomas Tuchel as he comes to command Chelsea Football Club? Thomas Tuchel is going to need some time to analyze his squad and get familiar with it. So I don't think making a top 4 spot is a realistic expectation. I think a realistic expectation is for Chelsea to make one of the Europa League spots. The only chance of Chelsea picking up silverware this season is through the FA Cup, so they should definitely take that competition seriously, and I think they can progress pretty far despite having a lot of competition. Also, Thomas Tuchel has less than a month to prepare for the first leg against Atletico Madrid in the UEFA Champions League, so I honestly believe him eliminating Atletico Madrid in the Champions League would exceed expectations, but I can't see Chelsea progressing further than the quarterfinals if they were to progress through the round of 16. So in the last 6 months of the season, I think Thomas Tuchel will focus on finishing in one of the Europa League spots, trying to win the FA Cup, and getting familiar with the squad so that he can be more successful with Chelsea next season than Chelsea were this season. Comment below and let me know what you guys think about Chelsea firing Frank Lampard. In my opinion, it was 100% justified. Anyways, that's all that I have for today. If you liked the video, make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit the notification bell. And until next time, peace!